Dynasty Decisions, episode number 121 of breaking down your fantasy football teams, your decisions, your trades, your rookie draft questions, and most importantly, giving you guys some direction on your Dynasty fantasy football rosters. Of course, if you guys do want to get your team covered in future videos, we do have a queue going right now. You can submit your team down below. Mother Flockers, who are Flock Fantasy FSE code user subscribers, skip the line. Flockers are second, and then free submissions are third if we get to any of those. Right now, I believe we have about 8 or 9 Flockers in the queue and 4 Mother Flockers in the queue after this video. So we're working through them. If you guys submitted and you're a site subscriber, like early June, mid-June is probably about where we're at on the Flockers, and then kind of late June areas where we're at on the Mother Flockers. So without further ado, let's get into the first team. All right, so let's get things kicked off with Juanye here. We have a Mother Flocker tier subscriber, 16-team PPR Superflex, so absolutely a glutton for punishment here. Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, and Deshaun Watson. I can't imagine many people have a better quarterback for in a 16-team Superflex league. Jalen Warren, Tony Pollard, Bucky Irving, and others there at running back. Jefferson, Harrison, London, Ayuk, Collins, Higgins at wide receiver. Mark Andrews, Jake Ferguson, Ben Sinnott, and others at tight end there. So paid the price, doesn't have much draft capital, no firsts in the next 2 draft classes, no seconds in the next 2 draft classes. But man, for a 16-team Superflex, this is a hell of a roster so far.
Yeah, no, 100%. I mean, this roster, you do address it in your little paragraph here, but aside from the running back position, you are absolutely stacked to the rim. And you're a little bit over exaggerating the need for the running back at this current point. Again, I understand that will end up being, the biggest need if you are to win the championship. But on the other side, man, if you even enter the season in a 16-team start 9 league where you can start, 4 wide receivers in your lineup, a tight end in your lineup, obviously the 2 quarterbacks in your lineup, I think Jalen Warren and Tony Pollard can suffice at least for the early season. And then potentially if you have to move one of those receivers, or you have to move, like, say Benson gets off to a good start and maybe he's able to get you some running back equity maybe at that point. Or, I mean, straight up, maybe you just look to move one of Andrews or Ferguson. Obviously, Ferguson would be the ideal one, but because you have the stack, because Andrews has a high market value, maybe Mark Andrews is able to get you a better comparative running back.
Yeah, I think knowing that I can just transition one of these wide receivers pretty easily into running back production is probably what I would end up doing. Like maybe London is the guy that sticks out to me that has high market value right now. Ayuk too, who both profile as somebody that should get you within striking distance of one of the top running backs, I would say, whether it's Drake London plus 2/3 gets you to Jahmyr Gibbs or something like that. Maybe that's not enough to get it done, but I think in a league that's going to need depth, throwing volume of picks at some people might be the way to get it done in a trade like that. So for me, yeah, I mean, if you added a Breece Hall, Bijan, Jahmyr Gibbs, even like a Devon Achane or something like that to this team, you'd probably easily be the best team in the league and definitely poised to actually win the championship. He says, like, I hate buying running backs before training camp and preseason. He says J.K. Dobbins PTSD.
Yeah.
Feel you on that. He said, so what approach would you take with this squad? Should I wait until I get closer to the season to move some of my wide receivers in exchange for a running back, or should I just run it with the squad and then try and trade for picks in the next offseason? Yeah, I would just wait and see kind of close to the season, maybe see if you can get a deal done for a top young running back to anchor this team. If you can't, maybe the Gibbs manager is trying to compete, the Bijan manager is trying to compete, all that kind of stuff. Then during the season, hopefully you'll have some value opportunities where you can buy on a running back, especially if somebody is looking to tear it down and they have, say, Josh Jacobs or Saquon Barkley or something on their roster. You might be able to get them on the cheap for maybe Xavier Legette's having a nice rookie season so far at that point.
Yeah, I think we pretty much outlined it. At the end of the day, just stay patient with this roster, kind of see what the early season tells you. Again, you don't have to rush everything because, like you kind of said, trying to rush a move is how you end up in a spot where you don't have any leverage or any real stability. Like you said with the J.K. Dobbins move, I can relate to that in the league. I bought him in the off season. Obviously, the injuries kind of piled up in the last couple of years, but regardless, play it by ear. If you really need to buy a running back, I mean, who knows? Maybe Khalil Herbert ends up getting traded, or Bucky Irving ends up filling in for Rashad White as a starter for a few weeks. There's other outs to potentially have more running back depth. But once you know what the production of that room is giving you, I'm not against, like Corey said, shopping a London to see if you can get to one of the top 3 running backs. Or maybe if that's unattainable, Mark Andrews plus a small piece can get you even Jonathan Taylor.
Yeah, I mean, you have leverage at wide receiver and at tight end and at quarterback as well. Like, I mean, in a 16-team super flex, like Deshaun Watson's a hard asset to move, generally speaking, but in a 16-team super flex, I'm sure there's guys out there knowing that you have 3 quarterbacks on your roster that don't have 2 starters. And maybe you can move Deshaun Watson for an upside quarterback that's really cheap right now. Like maybe he has, I don't know, somebody that can get you by early on the season. Maybe he can sell Deshaun Watson for like Daniel Jones and get a small running back piece on top of Daniel Jones to be able to make that down tier, because you have Josh Allen and Dak Prescott. You're not necessarily going to need Watson as much as maybe some of the other guys in your league might need Watson. And some of the trades that he ended up making, we can go through here. He sent away a 2027 second for Javon Baker. Again, I like Javon Baker, but I think I probably wouldn't be paying second round draft capital for him. You sent away, actually, in reverse
to be
order,
fair, hey,
it's
a 16-team second round pick, and Javon Baker is like an early third rounder and a 12-man for our ranking. So it's not like,
no, that's fair. Yeah. It's also a 2027 pick, so it's like a ways away here. On May 1st, he ended up selling the 110, 111, and 114. So that was Bo Nix, Ladd McConkey, and Trey Benson is what that became. And he moved all the way up for Marvin Harrison Jr. Did you need to do this move? Probably not, but I think that's a very reasonable price to pay for Marvin, to be honest. I think the depth might have helped you, especially knowing that Benson would have probably been a good stalwart for your running back position, and Bo Nix maybe a trade chip that you could have shopped off at a later point in time. But I'm fine going after Marvin for that price.
I'm getting Marv every single time. I understand 16 team. It's still a start 9, so studs still do matter. And I mean, Marvin Harrison Jr. is one of the top 4 wide receivers in my rankings. So we take that. And then the final deal you have listed here, 2024, 106 Drake May in exchange for Deshaun Watson and T. Higgins. 16-teamer makes it closer. Again, in a typical 12-man league, I would want Drake May, but knowing the dynamic of this league, knowing the dynamic that you have Josh Allen, Dak Prescott, you add another wide receiver to potentially move on a later date. You know, maybe it's T. Higgins and in exchange for a running back, or maybe it opens you up to potentially trading, like Corey said, an Ayuk or Drake London for a running back. It gives you more avenues, more opportunity to add to the running back position eventually. So again, wouldn't make this in a 12-man league. Knowing the context of a 16-man, I don't think it's that bad.
No, yeah, same thing. And he said, I could have kept my first and just drafted like Jonathan Brooks and Trey Benson in the draft, but he said it was too hard to pass up the opportunity at Marvin. And I think there's a good chance that the person who made that deal with you had like a really bad roster and needed a lot of stuff anyway. So I kind of understand it from his perspective as well. But yeah, I mean, I think you're doing a good job with this team. I think you should have the best team in the league, or at least one of the best teams in the league. And again, be patient with the running back position. Maybe you move a wide receiver, maybe you move a tight end, maybe you transition off of Watson for a down tier quarterback. You have a lot of options and a lot of outs to be able to work a trade off of the rest of your roster. So I think you're probably in a good spot. We can probably move on to the next team here, which is from Brandon S. You guys can see the team on the screen there, a 14-teamer. So the deeper league video, apparently super flex league, PPR, 6 point per passing touchdown. Looks like there's a wide receiver and a tight end premium as well. So running back's probably not going to matter too much in this league. Patrick Mahomes, Jalen Hurts is a pretty nice start to the team. James Cook, Alvin Kamara, Aaron Jones, Ty Chandler, Nick Chubb, James Conner. Very like zero RB core. Actually really like how that one's built out. Amon-Ra, AJ, Chris Olave, Christian Kirk, Deontay Johnson, Jerry Jeudy, and others. Also looks like this is a Devy league as well, because he does have some Devies listed. And then Evan Ingram, Hunter Henry is the main tight ends there. Doesn't look like he has any of his picks in 2024, unless he already probably spent those, I would assume. So 2025, it looks like he has all of his draft capital. So he said this league is really sharp. It's a 14-team Devy league with deep lineups and a big pot. He said he won 2 years ago in 2022, and he made some trades last fall to repeat, but got knocked out in the semis, despite being the highest scoring regular season team by a good margin. He said, I'm torn on strategy moving forward and could use our thoughts with Mahomes, Hurts, and a good wide receiver core. He says, I'm strong short term and firmly a top 2 team this season, but clearly his running back room is a year from a cliff pretty much with Kamara and Chubb and those type of guys and Jones and Connor. But he does say rookie drafts are somewhat depleted, but we can't Devy quarterbacks, which is an interesting wrinkle I've never heard of. He said most of the 2025 running backs are already rostered with one house money team that looks like a 2025 or at latest 2026 monster. So he's a little bit trying to win right now. This is kind of the situation he's in.
And that's what you're going to go out and try to do. Because quite frankly, like you said, if there's already a developing 2025, 2026 monster, you want to make sure you can squeeze that orange juice a little bit, try to get one last little drink from it. Because quite frankly, if you're able to win 2 championships, 2022 and 2024, you're going to eventually have to turn this roster over, especially at the running back position, like you said. So just, I mean, looking at it, Mahomes Hurts, obviously great building point, but I'm not attached after this year if you're potentially going to reload, assuming, Kamara loses a ton of value or Aaron Jones loses a ton of value or maybe Nick Chubb doesn't come back fully from injury. You're going to have to start getting proactive after this year. But I will say, like Corey mentioned, this is your year to contend. You go and try to win that championship again, not leveraging all of your future picks. I think you have enough depth on this roster. Again, start 12 league. You have an ability to set a lineup of, Cook plus Kamara at running back, wide receivers, Amon-Ra, AJ Brown, Chris Olave, 2 tight ends there with Engram and Henry, 3 flexes. Then you can, whether it's Christian Kirk, Deontay Judy, whether it's Christian Kirk, Deontay, Ty Chandler, Nick Chubb, one of those guys, Aaron Jones, regardless, you're going to be having a ton of depth on this team, especially compared to the other teams in your league. 14-team league, start 12, man. I would assume that you're probably one of the deepest rosters in this league.
Yeah, for sure. I think between your running back core, you should end up with 2 guys that have top 15, top 20 production, and that's all you're really going to need with the rest of your roster. I mean, you said, don't leverage away your future picks and that kind of stuff, but it is a Devy league, right? So it's possible that,
that's fair.
Kamara plus your late projected Devy depleted first round pick maybe gets you a better running back, a more solidified running back going forward. But again, I probably wouldn't tinker with this roster, man. Like, you're going to be in a good spot to compete and potentially win the championship this year. And like you said, you won in 2022, winning 2 championships in 3 years is going to really set you up to endure potentially a long-term rebuild if you need to endure one. But I mean, you still, outside of your running back core, you're only really weak there in the long term. Like, your wide receiver core is still pretty young to the point that even if you only had a 1-year retool in 2025, you might actually be able to compete as soon as 2026 as well.
Yeah, 100%. And he has a couple trades here we can go through real quick. Again, I will mostly talk about the bottom one because I don't know the context of your Devy league. Again, I see, for example, Alec Iomaner was selected 514 and he's a Devy pick. But why is Brendan Rice, who's a rookie pick, in the same draft? Like, that's
I'm
what
guessing
I'm
you could take
about.
either rookies or Devy picks,
Gotcha,
in which case I probably, if I were in your spot, wouldn't have taken guys like Rasheen Ali and Brendan Rice and Jordan Travis. I would have just taken shots on Devy players at that
100%.
point in time. But I don't know the context of your league. Maybe after the 5-12 was when the Devy draft started. I'm not sure. But that wouldn't make any sense because it's a 14-team league. So for me, I would say I would have taken more Devy players in this draft if that was the dynamic. But regardless, I like Iomaner. I literally own him in both Devy leagues.
Again, if there's actual strategy, like, we got first, second, third, fourth, fifth rounders, etc. in our Devy league, and you could select either, Devy players or rookies. 9 times out of 10, it should be the Devy player. Because quite frankly, I understand, there's certain circumstances where there's like a Jaden Daniels or there's like, Ladd McConkey or guys that come late onto the scene. But for the most part, I mean, the bets are more so going to be aligned once you're able to hit on a Ashton Genty, you're able to hit on a Tet McMillan, a Luther Burden, guys like that.
Yeah, for sure. And I mean, looking at some of the trades he made, I mean, the AJ Brown trade, I'm probably fine with. A depleted 112 and Higgins for AJ Brown upgrade, I think it was totally fine there. Tank Dell 312 for Kamara 514. This seemed, I mean, obviously you made this trade last season. You made it during the season. So Tank Dell at the time wasn't quite to the level that he was now in terms of his overall value, but maybe at that point you should have been kind of foreshadowing to how he would be treated in the offseason.
Yeah.
And I would say you bought a running back. Again, you're a competitive team. I understand it. Kamara was giving you really good production during the season. But this is one of those deals that you look back on and you're like, man, I really wish I didn't sell Tank Dell for Alvin Kamara.
Yeah. And then you also gave him the better pick. Like, and again, not to ring on, but yeah, you want that one back, let's just say, for East.
I mean, had he won the championship, I wouldn't feel too bad about it because Kamara was, like, when he was playing last year, like a legit top 6 running back.
Production-wise, absolutely. But again, like, if you're just talk about Tank Dell's value, how many running backs on the open market can you get you in Dynasty?
Oh, a lot. But again, you do have to recognize that you're going to sacrifice some value when you're going after production for Kamara there. Musgrave and Chigakonkwo you sold for Evan Ingram and Khalil Herbert.
Easily.
I think that was a good move. Ingram's definitely the best asset in
tight end 2 in
deal,
fantasy last year.
Yeah, literally. So, I mean, I look at this team and I say there's probably nothing you absolutely have to do. You can just go out and try and win and then, reevaluate in 2025, maybe tear it down, maybe just, because the other thing too is like if Kamara, Jones, Chubb, and those guys are still producing and they're still projected to be starters going into 2025, there's no reason that you can't just reload with some young players in the rookie draft and actually run this thing back again and try and win again if you do win this year. So really good spot that you're in, I would say. Let's move on to the next team that we have here, which is from Josh Slat's 12 team PPR, 6 point per passing touchdown, tight end premium, super flex league. Allen, Hurts, Herbert, and McCarthy. Jesus. Devon Achane, Trey Benson, and a number of other guys who are kind of just lower end guys at running back. Brian Thomas Jr. at 203, wildly enough. JSN, Marquise Brown, Adonai Mitchell, Jalen Polk, Troy Franklin, and others at wide receiver. Jalen McMillan at 410 is very nice. And then Sam Laporta as the main tight end with all of his rookie picks listed from 2024. And then it looks like he's got a nice little bevy of picks in 2025 with an extra 1, an extra 3, a couple extra 4ths, and an extra 2nd in 2026.
So I just noticed the Laporta.
Laporta. Yeah, I mean, this team is built really, really well. I mean, you'd love to have a better receiver core. Obviously,
wide receivers
you don't really have
are
any studs there. You're kind of banking on young rookies hitting. I actually have a team in kind of a similar situation where my quarterbacks are just nails and my wide receiver core, I'm kind of just banking on younger guys. But yeah, Allen, Hurts, Herbert, McCarthy, like, you really don't need that many good quarterbacks. Like Justin Herbert sticks out like a sore thumb on this team.
I mean, he just bought Justin Herbert.
He did, yeah, and I did.
For Fields in the 104, so I don't think the market's very hot for Justin Herbert in this league if he went for Fields in the 104.
Yeah, it looks like he has the sent and received in reverse order. Just to give you guys a heads up when you read these trades here,
it's just the mid one.
Oh, is it just the mid one that's like that? Yeah, because he got receipt. Yeah, okay. So Justin Herbert for 104 and Justin Fields. I mean, yeah, I would have bought Justin Herbert for that as well.
I hope so.
But during the season or whatever, like if Herbert is producing better than people think, or maybe you believe in Herbert and you want to sell Hurts or Allen for a big godfather, you just bought Allen, so probably Hurts would be the guy that you do that. Or even you just want to sell McCarthy too. You could always just sell him and do that. I want more wide receiver firepower, and that's what I'd be aiming to go out and get. You sold Puka Nacua, the 103, late first, late second, and Jahan Dotson for Josh Allen in the 108, which is essentially why you have no wide receiver firepower, because you could have added Puka Nacua and probably Malik Neighbors to this team without this Josh Allen trade. Again, he said in hindsight, I probably don't make this Josh Allen trade if I know I can get Justin Herbert for this.
Josh Allen. It's Josh Allen.
Right, but he just means like I would have probably not traded for Allen had I known the Herbert deal was on the table, because he could have had Hurts, Herbert, and or I guess not JJ McCarthy, but Hurts, Herbert, Malik Neighbors, Puka Nacua, late first, late second, and Jahan Dotson on his roster right now.
That's fair. I mean, at the end of the day, like when it comes to guys like Josh Allen, like I'm cool with it. Honestly, like, can you potentially get 85% of that package if you were to sell Hurts?
Yeah, I mean, I would shop your quarterback, see what you're getting offered. If nothing's to your liking, then obviously just hold them. You're not in a rush to compete right now, which is the nice thing. And the nice thing also, too, is that in 2025, you have a lot of draft capital, and the class isn't strong at quarterback. It isn't strong at tight end, and you're locked down at those positions already. What you need is flex position players, which is where the 2025 class is going to help you out a little bit. If you add a couple wide receivers to this team, a couple running backs to this team in 2025, then suddenly you might be a really competitive team come next year, assuming you do hit on some of these rookies, Brian Thomas, Adonai Mitchell, Troy Franklin, Jalen Polk. If you get 2 or 3 of those guys, plus maybe JSN to take a step forward, you could have a couple top 20 dynasty receivers, even though it doesn't really look like that right now.
Yeah, well, the thing with it, right, is you can make it up in numbers. Again, the issue, though, is it is a start 9 league. Firepower is absolutely necessary. You just don't have a dog. You don't have that top alpha in this wide receiver core. You don't have like a Lamb. You don't have like a Chase, a Marvin Harrison Jr., or even, I mean, like you had Puka. Puka would have been your number one, a Puka or a Garrett Wilson. So again, whatever avenues you have to take, obviously quarterback equity flipped into wide receiver equity is probably your best way to be able to make this happen. But yeah, I mean, like the number one goal by far is, can you get a legitimate established stud wide receiver?
Yeah, if you could swap Herbert straight for St. Brown right now, like that's the type of deal I would take any day of the week. He also had like a Charbonnet, Cole Kmet, Michael Wilson for Achane and a third. Just give me Achane there. So I think that was a good deal as well. Yeah, he said he just needs kind of an overall breakdown and kind of what path we would take with this team. He said, figure it's probably a house money window. Yeah, you're kind of waiting on young players to develop here. And he said, I'm thinking of sending out an offer to a competing but aging roster with risky starters. Let me know your thoughts. Send Herbert, receive Flowers, and 2 1s, I guess, and a potential second. I don't know if you can get Flowers and 2 1s. Would you sell Herbert for that?
For Flowers and 2 1s, if it's Flowers a 1 and a 2, I'm not. Flowers and
Yeah.
2-1s were doing that.
Yeah, for sure. I would recommend going after a better receiver and less picks if you can.
Yeah.
If you can get Garrett Wilson or St. Brown or some of those type of guys, I would rather do that than sell Flowers for 2-1s. But
Yeah.
at the same time, I think that's a pretty decent package if you're able to pull it off. But he says he has an aging roster with risky starters, so maybe that first in 2025 is a little bit later, but come 2026, you get an early to mid one out of it.
Or I mean, we haven't even talked about this avenue. Can you add a little piece on to Herbert to go and get like one of the top 3 guys?
Yeah, I'm sure that's definitely potentially in the cards.
You have a lot of
challenge
depth
with trading Herbert is that people recognize, like I do, that his redraft projection maybe not the greatest this year because of the potential run-heavy offense. He is actually one of the guys that's a little bit harder to sell as opposed to maybe Allen, Hurts, or McCarthy.
No, I definitely agree with that.
For sure. So, couple bits of work to do for Josh there. Let's move on to the second Josh of the video here. We got Josh P, 10-team PPR. Single quarterback. So we go from the high deep positions now to a single quarterback 10-teamer. So studs is all that really matters in this league. Trevor Lawrence, Drake May, Baker Mayfield at quarterback, Christian McCaffrey, Alvin Kamara, Austin Eckler, very aging running back core, but very productive still. Adams, Calvin Ridley, Amari Cooper, and others at wide receiver. Dallas Goedert at tight end. Looks like he has listed the 105, 212, and 312 in 2025, but I'm not sure if that's meant to be the 2024 draft, and he maybe hasn't had his rookie draft yet because he has exact picks listed there. So I'm just going to assume this is 2024, 2025, and 2026
That's
picks.
what I would assume as well.
So at 105, I mean, you're probably likely adding a wide receiver to this group, given the lack of depth that you have there and the fact that, an Xavier Worthy, Ladd McConkey, or Brian Thomas Jr. makes sense for this team. I mean, this is one of the more tried and true contenders you're going to see. Like, you don't really have a choice but to contend in this league. I will say, though, he said, I want to start rebuilding and offloading my team for young guys and picks. Could use some potential suggestions on trades. This is the type of league you absolutely need to know your league market, though, because if you're going to get adequate value for these players, then by all means sell them. But if you're not, then you're better off competing.
100%. And I actually think he already had his rookie draft because I do see some rookie players there. Theo Johnson, probably the 312. Drake May, probably the 105. And then 212, if I'm looking through it. Who would he have? No way he took Gore Jr. at the 212. Who else would he have taken?
Okay, well, if it is a single quarterback league and he took Drake May at the 105, that's a bit of an issue.
Yeah,
unless he just forgot to check off that it is a super flex. If this is a super flex, that's totally fine, obviously. But if it is a single quarterback league, that would not be great if he took Drake May at the 105. I'm just going to assume he forgot to check off that it was a super flex. It's probably a super flex league.
Yeah, most likely, because why else would he have Trevor Lawrence, Drake May, and Baker Mayfield?
Yeah, exactly. So, I mean, again, looking at the team, it's very clear that you would compete if you hold as is, but if you're able to sell off players for good assets, and it looks like he's kind of already started doing that. By the looks of it, he sold off Mike Evans on May 25th for 2 second-round picks, which I think is a pretty decent return.
Sorry, I have to address this real quick, though. I don't understand within a 9-day stretch how you trade away James Cook, a first and a second for Devontae Adams, and then trade away Mike Evans for 2-2s. This is just so counterintuitive. Not to mention, straight up, Mike Evans, Devontae Adams, I think is a coin flip in Dynasty. And you basically lost out on so much value here. Because, I mean, you're talking about you got 2 seconds. You gave up Cook a first and a second. That's just straight value you didn't need to give away. Again, maybe you're just so confident in Devontae Adams and not in Mike Evans, which I wouldn't understand considering their redraft ADP is within the same area, mid to late second round at this current point on Underdog Fantasy. So I need to know the rationale, honestly. I think the first move, I don't understand at all. And
the second move is bad.
The second move, I don't mind the value. 2-2s, older receiver, whatever. If you're going to be proactive and all your moves were going to be linear matching this in terms of shedding production. The problem, though, is once you make the Devontae Adams trade, why make the Mike Evans trade? You overpay.
What about the Christian Watson trade? That's even also not like you the first 2 trades, because in time chronological order, you sold James Cook a first and a second for Devontae Adams. Again, in my opinion, overpay. James Cook and Devontae Adams were about the same straight. Like, you should have sold James Cook straight for Devontae Adams. But then you decided, okay, now I'm weak at running back. I'm going to sell a young upside wide receiver for Austin Eckler, who is a 13th round redraft pick on Underdog right now. Like, he's not the type of guy that's going to give you any kind of needle moving production. And then you panicked and you're like, oh shit, I just bought 2 aging assets. I better sell off an aging asset for 2-2s. It's like, you got to kind of pick a lane here. If you're going to compete, you got to compete. And again, I don't like either of your competitive trades, but I do like your rebuilding trade, which gives me the sense that it's possible that this type of league market would be the type that you could sell off your aging players for good value.
Straight up, we just need to make more sense with the order of our moves. If we're making a contending move, why are we also trading a contending piece for 2-2s? Because like I can't contextualize it. It's like now looking back, you have 2-2s and a 3 in 2026 and no James Cook, when you could have just had pretty much the same projection with Mike Evans instead of Devontae Adams at wide receiver.
Yeah, it was a lot of nonsensical moves, to be honest. It's like,
Yeah.
and I would argue your team got worse production-wise because
Yeah.
James Cook, I would prefer to Austin Eckler from like a production
worse.
standpoint. Mike Evans and Adams, like you said, is pretty much a wash. I would like to still have Christian Watson as wide receiver depth and those draft picks as well. So you basically made a bunch of moves to get worse in your redraft projection. So I know it sounds like we're piling on right now, but you have to figure out the direction of your team. It's you say right here, I want to start the rebuilding phase and offloading my team for young guys and picks. Could use some potential suggestions on trades. Whatever your goal is going to be this year, whether it's to rebuild or contend, whatever trade you make has to be in service of that goal. You can't make trades that are rebuilding trades and trades that are contending trades within a 2-week span like you did here.
Yeah, and I've seen it before in leagues I'm in. People are indecisive. People don't want to really fully commit because they kind of get, cold feet, buyer's remorse in a sense. But at the same time, if you pick a lane, you can't be lane hopping. You can't be switching back and forth. The cops are out. They're watching if you're lane hopping. They're watching if you're speeding, trying to pass people right now. You can't do that. You got to stick in your lane. You got to drive your lane, and you got to drive the damn speed limit because that cop is watching with his radar gun out.
Yeah, and I'm not gonna lie. Like when I play in leagues with players who don't know their direction, it's
they're the
easy
target.
pickings, man.
They're the target.
If I have contending assets, I'm selling them to these guys. If I have rebuilding assets that I'm trying to buy contending assets, like I've made trades with people who don't really know their direction, where I've sold them a contending asset. They realize they can't contend, and a year later, when my rebuild is done and I can contend, I buy the exact asset back.
Yeah, for
way
like
cheaper than I sold it to them for.
60-50% of the cost.
Yeah, like picking your direction is the crucial part here. If you want to rebuild, that's fine. I think you'll get good value for these players based on the trades that you made in this league. Adams, Ridley, Cooper, McCaffrey, Kamara, Eckler, anybody old is off your team. And again, use our trade calculator to make sure you're getting appropriate value for these players.
You have to stick and choose with it though, because again, like Corey said, if you really wanted to run this team back, start 9 league, you got firepower, like you should be able to contend with this team. But if you are contending, we can't be just selling off Mike Evans after we make a big move for Devontae Adams. You have to pick one or the other. You have to say, hey, am I ready to contend and ready to try to get that goddamn chip? Or if you realize, hey, you know what? I got to get out of these guys now. You have to stick and rebuild that team. There's no mix and match. There's no gray area. It is black and it is white, and you got to pick your path here.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, lots of work to do. Definitely pick a direction and stick to it. Let's move on to the next team here, which is from Logan B's team, or Logan B here. He has listed a 12-team PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown, super flex league. Justin Herbert, Will Levis, Michael Penix Jr. as the main quarterbacks there. Tony Pollard, Zamir White, Jerome Ford, Trey Benson, a number of other guys, Kendre Miller, and good depth, good young depth at running back. Chris Olave, DJ Moore, Nico Collins, George Pickens, Brian Thomas Jr., Ladd McConkey, Keon Coleman, Ricky Pearsall at wide receiver, and then Dalton Kincaid as his main tight end. It looks like he has a lot of draft capital in the future, or all of his picks at the very least. He did leave us like a legend here, so anybody that has TC1 beside their name is a 0 to 1 year possible trade candidate. So DJ Moore and some of the guys there. TC2 is a trade candidate, 1 to 2 years potentially. He also has kind of like taxi squad players listed here. And then he says candidates to be cut as well, like a Dwayne McBride or a Bailey Zappi there. And then he also has a number of questions. So let's start with his questions, and then we'll go through some of his trades here. He said, who would you cut and who would you add to the taxi squad, assuming McBride is cut? So he has listed some of the free agents available there. I'd be okay grabbing like a Cedric Tillman or somebody like that and throwing him on the back of my taxi instead of Dwayne McBride or Bailey Zappi. I don't know how you feel about that.
So he has to cut 3 players, he said, right? He's 3 players over the roster limit. Don't have to cut until week 1. I mean, yeah, like the main ones you're looking at are Zappi, McBride.
I'd say Evan Hull probably would be the other one for me.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, those seem like the clear 3. Maybe, again, you have Justice Hill listed as a trade candidate. If you get any tangible value for Justice Hill, I would be shocked. Like, somebody offers me the 412 projected pick in next year's class, I am snatching that up and not thinking twice.
Yeah, and I mean, he does say too, like he wants to trade. I would just drop Hill, to be honest, I'd be totally okay doing that. He said Hull intrigues me, so if you like Hull, just hold on to him. That's probably what I would do, and cut Justice Hill, Dwayne McBride, and Bailey Zappi. He also says, I'm weak at quarterback. How would you fill this depth problem? Down to your Herbert somehow. I feel okay selling high on, or I felt okay selling high on Howell. So we'll talk about that trade in a second, but I don't think you're weak at quarterback, to be honest. I think Justin Herbert, Michael Penix, and Will Levis is just a fine 3-stack at quarterback, to be honest.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's fine. Obviously, from a pure production standpoint, it's probably not one of the greatest. Knowing that Levis is kind of like what the wide receiver 24 in ADP. Herbert's like the wide receiver 17 right now. I'm saying wide receiver, quarterback 24 and 17. Michael Penix obviously projected to start the year as a backup. So I agree from the aspect that, from a point equity standpoint, maybe your quarterback core isn't great, but I will say from a future value standpoint, you have the 8th overall pick that you got at the 204. You have Will Levis, who we both believe potentially taking a step in that new redesigned Titans offense. And obviously Justin Herbert, from a pure talent standpoint, is one of the 5 best quarterbacks in the NFL. So in terms of overall tradability, it's not like Justin Herbert, even if we apply the ACL test to him, if he tore his ACL tomorrow, missed the 2024 regular season, he would just go back to being maybe a late second as his floor in terms of valuation.
Yeah, Kyler's a good measuring stick for what happened to him. Like what happened to Kyler would probably be what happens to Herbert if he tore his ACL. But I mean, if you can, as I've said about Justin Herbert, if you're a competitive team and you can transition him into a better production quarterback who's valued similarly, like Kyler Murray, like Jordan Love, like Anthony Richardson, like somebody like that, then do it. But if you can't, just hold on to Justin Herbert. I would not be looking for depth quarterbacks for Justin Herbert. Definitely don't do that. I would say you have a high-end talent problem at quarterback, not a depth problem at quarterback. And then his other question he has listed here is, what do you think of DJ Moore / Tony Pollard? Is it savvy to trade them or keep as win now glue? And he kind of just says, like, he likes DJ Moore, but his gut is telling him he's at peak value right now. Again, if you think he's at peak value, then by all means go and move on from him. I think he's probably around that too because of Odunze's presence there. Maybe you can sell DJ Moore for somebody with a little bit more upside. Maybe you can sell him. You want to take a swing on Xavier Worthy, or you want to take a swing on trying to think somebody in DJ Moore's range. Maybe somebody can DJ Moore can get you up to a Devontae Smith or a T Higgins who have a little bit more production.
I would aim higher.
If you don't believe in DJ Moore as much, maybe you prefer those guys.
I wouldn't add on to either of those two. If I'm adding on, it would. I mean, you have Nico Collins, but it would be in the range of like Nico
London
Collins
or
London, like
Ayuk.
I mean, fuck, if you wanted to get younger, I wouldn't even be opposed to switching him straight up for his teammate. Like, if you could add a little piece on that for Roman Dunze, like, that's the type of trades I'm looking to do. To me, I have DJ Moore ranked higher than T Higgins. I have DJ Moore ranked higher than Devontae Smith, and they're all the same age. So,
yeah, no, I feel you on that. So he said currently he's the 4th best team in the league, but the best team is double in value and absolutely stacked with studs. So yeah, I mean, you're going to need to build out a team that really competes because you're hitting on picks and that kind of thing. So again, anything can happen in a regular season, but you definitely want to at least be like a top 3 to 4 team. And if you're a top 4 team, then yeah, you don't have to sell your competitive assets if you don't want to, but if you're getting good value for Tony Pollard and DJ Moore, I'd be okay with doing that. He has a number of trades listed here. It looks like he's a trader like me and Danny are traders. I mean, since March, he's made like 10 trades here listed. So, I mean, I looked through all of these. Again, you mentioned you're high on Evan Hall. I'm fine with that. Trading up for Ladd McConkey using Kirk Cousins, I think.
Zamir White, fine value.
Yeah, Zamir White for the 211 is fine for me. Benson for the 202, or for Sam Howell in the 5th is crazy good value. Yeah. It says listed 3-way trade: Mark Andrews, Elijah Moore, 207, AD Mitchell, and then Kendrick Bourne, who was a free agent you got up to. Brian Thomas Jr., 203, which he eventually traded away to move back or whatever. Michael Penix. I don't love the 203 trade back to 303 and a third. Yeah, that's the one that I don't really like. I would have just taken, like, 203 Corum is like also egregiously high in my opinion for where he went. Like, I would have probably just been okay taking Keon Coleman or whoever. Like, I mean, you took Coleman at 205, but I would have been okay taking somebody like that even at 203 and just holding there instead of trading down for 303 Corley in a third.
Corum went above both Keon Coleman and Michael Penix.
Yeah, that's pretty insane. Danny's a big Corum guy, but that is a little bit wild to me. And then he sold Damian Pierce, Treylon Burks in the 405 for Ricky Pearsall. And he says 211 was on the board was Jalen Polk and Sinnott and stuff. I would have taken Polk, but that's fine if you want to go Pearsall there. Isaiah Likely ends up selling for Audric Estime there and 406. That's totally fine with me. And then 405, you sold off and you received a future third, which I think was a sharp move there. So overall, you've done a number of sharp moves. I kind of trust your process. I think we can probably move on to the next team because you're in a pretty good spot. And I feel like you kind of know what you're doing at this point in time. Derek is the next team that we have here, a 12-team, half PPR, 4-point per passing touchdown, single quarterback league here, a Aaron Rodgers, Anthony Richardson, Bo Nix trio. Jonathan Brooks, Kendre Miller, Tank Bigsby, and others at running back, Garrett Wilson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors, DJ Moore, Rome Odunze, Jaden Reed, Josh Downs, Jalen Polk, very loaded at wide receiver, Sam Laporta, Michael Mayer as the main tight ends, and then 4 first rounders in 2025. Very good team so far. I mean, this is quite literally the definition of how you exactly want to set up a roster, because in a single quarterback league, Richardson, Rodgers, Bo Nix is just fine. In a wide receiver, you have absolutely like no weaknesses. You have 3 first-round startup picks at wide receiver, and Rome Odunze, and DJ Moore, and Jaden Reed. So you're loaded there. You have the best tight end in Dynasty, and your house money running back core has a guy that could be a top 5 Dynasty running back after this year in Jonathan Brooks. So this is prototypical. This season, house money team, and I'm going to add my running backs in the 2025 class.
Oh, every single time when you're on the clock in next year's class with those 4 first-round picks. Again, do your due diligence. Maybe you can explore the vet market. Realistically, though, unless I'm getting a very, very good value, probably like a 110% value in my favor, I'm not touching those 2025 picks, because what I see here is the perfect shell. We're talking about a stud potential at quarterback, the number 1 tight end, a stud built wide receiver room, like you said, top 12, potential top 5 running back by the end of the year in Dynasty if Jonathan Brooks comes back healthy, gets a big workload for the Carolina Panthers. Those 4 first-round picks, if they can materialize into some combination of like Luther Burden or Ashton Genty or Ollie Gordon or Quinjon Judkins or Marion Hampton or Ted McMillan or Emeka Egbuka, you get the gist. There's a ton of stud talent in next year's class, to the point where, especially having all of those projected early and mid, again, I would agree that in a single quarterback, the late first, early second area is probably the most ambiguous right now of the 2025 class. But if people are calling the 2025 class weak, you got to focus on that top to mid, because they are strong, talented NFL prospects.
Yeah, especially in one quarterback formats, the flex production will be pretty solid there. He said he's looking at, maybe trading for like a Derrick Henry, a Najee Harris, a Zach Moss, cheaper options that will maybe get him some production during the season. I wouldn't do that before the year. I'd be okay doing that during the season if Jonathan Brooks is healthy and producing.
Not moving any of those ones.
Yeah, and don't touch the ones. Use Downs, Polk, Jaden Reed, DJ Moore, guys like that to get a running back.
Don't use, you really have to.
Yeah, don't use the picks if I were you. That would be a good piece of advice as well, because, I mean, if Brooks is producing and you're like, man, if I just had one more running back and Josh Downs can get you Derrick Henry, who's banged up at the start of the season or something, then by all means, go ahead and do that. But I'm not in any rush with this team, man. Like, I'd be okay having a mid-first this year because I didn't make the playoffs. I finished with the 106. And come 2025, look out.
Absolutely. And he has a couple trades listed here. So he actually had another 2025 first. He would have had another early one. He ends up sending the 106 plus an early projected 25 one in exchange for Malik Neighbors. Fair deal on face value. I mean, at the end of the day, you do have all the picks. So if you really wanted to go get a needle moving player in a start 9, I have no qualms with the deal. Again, maybe in your spot, I would have rather personally tried to monopolize the class, but knowing the 106 in a 1 quarterback league, like, who were you looking at there? Probably
Brian
Worthy
Thomas
or
Jr.
Brian Thomas.
Probably. Or,
and then
Vlad McConkey.
Either of those guys plus a first-round pick into Malik Neighbors. That's fair enough to me. Again, if you had 5 2025 first, you could have absolutely put your league mates in a bind. But at the same time, it's like now you're putting your league mates in a bind because your wide receivers are absolutely filthy.
Yeah, I mean, your wide receivers were really good before this. So the only thing I might have suggested is if 106 plus an early 2025 first got you Bijan Robinson, I would have done that instead. You know what I mean? Like, Neighbors and Bijan are very similarly valued, and I would prefer Bijan given the landscape of his team.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. Yeah,
but and overall, then the other trade, 112 and 210 for Jonathan Brooks at 109, I think that was totally fine. I mean, 112 was probably Keon Coleman or something. 210 was probably Marshawn Lloyd or something like that. Totally fine moving up for Brooks there.
Oh, right. No, last he was 205 Keon Coleman. I was gonna make a joke. Yeah, no, you're totally right.
Yeah. So again, I mean, I look at this team and there's not really much that I would recommend that you do. I mean, maybe if you're going to, the only way I would sell any of those firsts that you have next year is if you can get a discount on one of the elite trio running backs, Bijan
Yeah.
Robinson, Breece Hall, or Jahmyr Gibbs. Those would be the only running backs that I would buy that are expensive. The other running backs that I would maybe consider buying, maybe you wanted to throw one of those, like whatever the mid to late projected, the closest one is for Devon Achane. If you could get that done, that would be fine with me as well. But for the most part, like I'm totally cool just kind of waiting and seeing how those picks materialize and just spending them on running backs next year.
I agree. You're in no rush. This team is so well built with all those future picks, with all that top end talent to the point where you can choose when the team is telling you they're ready to compete when to go all in. Again, I'm not rushing the process. I'm not throwing picks just to patchwork my running backs. If your team starts 5-1, 6-1, Kendre Miller's maybe getting a little bit more work. Jonathan Brooks comes back from injury as a top 8 running back, and then obviously your quarterback, tight end, wide receivers are carrying you. At that point, it's like, okay, maybe I'm more willing to move a first round pick to get like an Achane or a Jonathan Taylor or someone like that. But unless that is the exact scenario, do not rush it.
Yeah, and like I said, you could also go cheap too. Maybe Josh Downs is having a breakout season and you can sell him for Joe Mixon straight up or something like that because your team is really, really producing and you could use a second running back to help you with that. I'd be fine doing that too. But again, don't rush the process. You are super well set up, a very enviable position, I'm sure, for a lot of your league mates. Let's move on to the final team of the video, which is from Casey M here. A 12-team PPR Superflex league. Kyler Murray, Deshaun Watson, Daniel Jones as the quarterbacks, James Cook, Javonte Williams, Zach Charbonnet, Marshawn Lloyd, a number of other guys, Jalen Wright, Kendre Miller, Roshan Johnson out running back, and then also CeeDee Lamb, Jamar Chase, Marvin Harrison Jr., Malik Neighbors. That is 4, count them, of my top 7 dynasty wide receivers. Jordan Addison, Christian Kirk, Rashee Rice as depth, and then Kyle Pitts and Michael Mayer. And for some reason, 4 firsts and 4 seconds next year.
Sorry, I'm just looking at some of the spelling of these names. Izzy Abanikanda, CeeDee Lamb, Malik Neighbors. Like there's a couple interesting ones, but yeah, sorry. My eyes kept looking towards the Izzy Abanikanda.
Yeah, this is one of these teams, man, where this is a Bijan Breece buy team. Like dude, you have so many running backs that are solid as depth, but if you added one hammer to this team, this is a monster, absolute monster. If 2 of those mid first plus 1 second gets you Bijan Robinson, and even if you have to throw in fucking Kendre Miller or Jalen Wright,
I'm reading the description. It doesn't.
It doesn't.
These guys are holding him hostage. He said, I'm obviously struggling with too much receiver. You're never struggling with too much receiver depth. Let's not get that twisted. That's not a struggle. That's actually a good spot to be, but I digress. He says, nobody wants to give me anything fair or even close to fair for a quarterback, future pick, running back that's not 100 years old. So you're just dealing with a bunch of haters in this league that notice that you have a monster, and instead of trying to help their own teams, would rather try to cuck you. That's what they're trying to do.
That exists. I've been in leagues like that too. Me and you make content. People don't want to help us. So when we're in dynasty leagues,
then make it good for themselves.
Yeah, dude, even in my home redraft league, nobody wants to trade with me regardless if I'm losing or winning the trade or not, because they just think I'm going to win it somehow. They're like, oh, you definitely just know something that's going to happen. And I'm like, no, I don't actually. I'm taking an equal risk that you're taking here.
It's so dumb too, because sometimes I'll literally have a fair deal. And like by my rankings, I'll show like, hey, like it actually says it favors you here. Then they'll be like, well, then why are you making a deal with me then? And it's like,
I like players like you like players. I want Bijan or whatever. I want this player. Yeah. Like I'm okay overpaying for it. So again, if you had to overpay for Bijan on this team, I'd be okay doing it. If somebody wanted 2 1s, 2 2s, and Jalen Wright, I'd be fine doing it on this roster because you're in a position where you can sacrifice some value for a potential legendary running back who's 21, 22 years old. But again, it's possible you're just being completely locked out of those players because nobody wants to give you the value that you have to offer because they're just like, you know what, screw you. You spend your picks and hopefully you hit on them. But if that's the situation you're in, I mean, you can win this year. Like you're capable of winning this year. The thing that I'm worried about a little bit is your quarterbacks could lose a lot of value this year. Kyler Murray is the only real lockdown guy I feel great about long-term. Watson and Daniel Jones could lose their jobs.
I have one relatively big issue here. Not with the team itself, But with the context that quarterbacks, running backs, and picks are so hard to trade for in this league. The fact that you got the 101 and did not take Caleb Williams when after Kyler Murray, you have a ton of question marks at quarterback, I think that's a rookie move. Again, great fucking team. You've done a good job building the team as a whole. But if you know quarterbacks are hard to attain, why are you not taking Caleb Williams when your receivers are already strong?
I get the temptation of wanting to pair Lamb, Chase, and those guys together.
Oh,
Even if
it's so
Harrison was going to
beautiful.
go 101 in this league, you should have traded down to 102 and taken Caleb there. Yeah, I disagree. I disagree with taking Harrison 101 as well. I definitely would have taken Caleb Williams.
Yeah, it's just like I love the deal. 106, Kelsey, first, get off my team. Like, your team is so good to the point where Kelsey depreciating asset, you have Kyle Pitts. 106, yeah, good asset. Maybe like a Drake May if you're lucky, but most likely going to be like a Roma Dunze. Good asset. 2026 late one, obviously good asset. But at the end of the day, if you were able to get Caleb Williams, again, Marv, great in his own aspect, but you can rock CD, Jamar, Neighbors as your top 3 receivers. Jordan Addison, Christian Kirk, Rashid Rice as your main depth. You're solid at wide receiver. Again, you actually mentioned here, I'm obviously struggling with too much wide receiver depth. Then why did you make the Marv pick?
Yeah, no, exactly. And then he also mentions that Justin Fields for Rashid Rice mid freak out. I think that was a sharp move. And then Diggs in the 108 got you up to Malik Neighbors at 104, which I think was also a very good move there. So he also said, I believe Daniels would be there at 104, and he got taken at 103. So he doubled down
that makes more
on
sense.
The wide receivers.
That makes more sense again. But at the same time, I'm not going to let you off the hook because it's like I'm not passing on Caleb Williams to potentially get Jaden Daniels at the 104 because I don't even have Jaden Daniels ranked at the 104. So I think you should have just went Caleb and Malik Neighbors, and you would have been more ecstatic with this draft. And I mean, who knows? Maybe the guy at 102 really wanted Marv. You can, re-explore that avenue. But judging from the league market at hand, you took the risk and it did not pay off for you.
Yeah, it's unfortunate. I suppose you could have also just taken Drake May there instead of Malik Neighbors, which would have
I don't mind the Malik Neighbors move.
I don't mind it either, but he could have probably taken Drake May there. I'm assuming he was on the board if Jaden Daniels went 103.
Like, for me, it's mostly just like I view it obviously Caleb and Marv, one for the other. I would prefer Caleb. Malik, Drake May, I view very on an even service level, to be honest. So
yeah. To me, the way that I viewed it in terms of open market value and how I was playing with the board when I was on the clock was I wasn't going to get cute at 101. I was just going to take Caleb Williams because so many people asked us like, hey, I have 101 and 104. Should I take Marvin at 101 because I can get a quarterback at 104? It's like I was just going to take Caleb 101 and hope that Neighbors fell to 104. And if he didn't, I was going to have another quarterback asset that I could deal, or at 104, I could trade down for Odunze or something like that.
That was actually one of the popular opportunity bundles that I've been, exploring this offseason. When you're at the 101 and the 103 or the 101 and the 104, which opportunity bundle would you rather have? The combination of Caleb Williams plus Malik Neighbors or the combination of Marvin Harrison Jr. plus Drake May? Again, I love Drake May, but knowing the market value at hand here, by the way, I just noticed the logo is kind of protruding from itself, but knowing the market value of Drake May versus Caleb Williams at this current point, I would rather have the Caleb Williams and Malik Neighbors side because to me, the market views Malik Neighbors closer to Marv than it does Drake May to Caleb.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So that is the end of this video. I think Casey's obviously still in a very good spot regardless. Just maybe you'll have to overpay for something. Not exactly sure how you're going to handle that if everybody's going to lock you out. Worst case scenario, you just spend all those 2025 picks and you're probably capable of winning this year and definitely capable of winning in 2025. So that is the end of this video. If you guys did enjoy, leave a like down below, subscribe to the channel. If you are new around here, again, if you do want your team reviewed, there's a link down below to a Google form in the description. Dynasty Decision submission form. Flock Fantasy code users of FSE only do get priority access. If you're a mother flocker, you skip the line entirely. If you're a flocker, you skip the free submissions, and we go mother flocker, flocker free submissions. And like I said, there was 9 flockers left in the queue after this recording took place, and then also a couple mother flockers who submitted 2 teams at once. So I just kind of bumped them down a little bit in the queue because they already got a team covered recently. So that is kind of the order of the stuff right now. So if you did want to sign up as a mother flocker, you could get your team covered immediately and be in the next Dynasty Decisions video, which I'm sure we'll do probably next week. But like, comment, subscribe. Like I said, peace out. We'll talk to you soon.